What comes to mind when you think of recycling?
That it is so much more than the glass or cardboard or plastic you set at the end of your curb.
Starting as a family business?
It was a niche at that time, and it's become an industry that I think people have been able to pass along from generation to generation.
From small family companies to the recycling giants of today.
I tell people all the time, I'm not trying to build a good company. I want to build a great company.
Every industry grows, adapts, innovates, and progresses. The recycling industry is driven by two major factors: a passion for helping the planet, conserving it for current and future generations, and continued economic viability, not just in the US, but on a global scale. Still, to remain competitive, companies within the industry need to innovate. Whether it's equipment, technology, tools, or even policy. Progress can't be tossed in the bin. I'm Kristen Morand, and in this episode of Jobs of Tomorrow, we are diving into recycling to see how the industry has kept pace with innovation. Recycling and reusing materials is something humans have been doing for millennia. Even in colonial America, if someone had their clothes altered, the unused material would be transformed and used to make paper, and iron would be melted down and used for nails or horseshoes. During World War II, it was common for people to gather materials and repurpose them, often collecting metal and rubber to help with the war effort. We've come a long way. People have always found ways to repurpose and reuse things. From simple, everyday practices, like Neanderthals repurposing bones to make tools, to colonial settlers finding ways to reuse materials to survive in a new world. It wasn't long before a profession grew out of these practices. From individual efforts to family companies, which evolved into multinational corporations. Corporations that rely on scientists, engineers, economists, and technicians to innovate and find ways to recycle new products. But how did these companies come into existence? Let's jump back to the origins of recycling in the US.
This industry historically started with family businesses. If we think about how the metal recycling and tire recycling and material recycling started, it started primarily on the East Coast in the United States. And it actually started by families or people actually finding goods that could then be recycled or repurposed and then made money off of doing it.
Brandy Harlow understands the family business side of things, as she took over the family business, South Post Oak Recycling Center, in 2013.
It started with a lot of Jewish families on the East Coast who saw an opportunity. It's the classic one man's trash is another man's treasure. And so I think because you had a group of people and you had a group of immigrants specifically, and it wasn't just Jewish, that found opportunities, I believe my sense is that they began to grow businesses together and they saw it as an industry that literally you could recreate the American dream in. And so it was a niche at that time, and it's become an industry that I think people have been able to pass along from generation to generation because it was successful. It was successful with the first generation, the second generation, the third. And so I think it's a natural progress. If you look around with any industry, if there's a business or a business model or an industry that works well and people have some sort of fiduciary intuition or they figure it out, then why let it go? Why not continue to build on it?
And today, it's not just about running a successful business. Recycling is on the cutting edge of sustainability, making sure that we're using resources already gathered from the earth responsibly.
It's an awesome place to be and grow and be a part of the future of sustainability.
To stay on top of new materials being introduced to the recycling stream almost daily, recyclers need to continuously rethink how they're processing products and packaging. This means that instead of being based in theory and cool factor, innovations in the industry tend to be designed to solve specific issues. For example, SA Recycling focuses their energy on engineering and building their own specialized equipment.
We have a very strong background in engineering, and we make a lot of our own equipment. We make our own balers for dewatering. We have quite a few patents on equipment that we built. And so I feel that there's always better ways to do something, and we spend a lot of time innovating and working on how to do things better.
In addition to mechanized solutions, there are some more high-tech tools in the pipeline as well. These solutions are well known and often used for sortation, which would take much longer without these tools.
We've had automation in this industry for a long time. That's been a part of the growth, from using eddy current systems, which are magnetic systems that pick out iron versus leaving non-ferrous material available, to having robots that are actually source segregating material, to using technology to actually track inventory and track goods. That is actually, automation is going to be, I think, a huge part of our industry.
Incorporating new technologies is going to help companies grow to meet higher demands. And going hand in hand with these solutions are scientists, technicians, and engineers to keep them running.
It's going to be a huge part of our growth. If anything, I think we will need people to complement the automation, or even we might need people to gain additional skill sets to support the advancements in automation.
Definitely been a lot of change, going forward. I'm not trying to build a good company. I want to build a great company. That will always be my first real experience with equipment that I thought was magical.
Before we can truly look at how the recycling industry is innovating and progressing into the future, we need to see how it works today. A few years ago, if you looked at recycling in the US, you would see a whole host of family-owned businesses. Not surprising, since that's how the industry began. But today, looking at the same number of companies, you'd see privatized corporations overtaking those family businesses. Why is that?
There's definitely been a lot of change, going forward. When you go back in the last century, most of the scrap businesses were generational, 2-3 generations. You don't really see it as much today.
With over 40 years in the industry, George has grown his small family business into one of the recycling leaders of today.
SA Recycling consists of 125 locations. We're in 15 states. We have a little over 3,000 employees. We're handling a little over 5 million tons of ferrous a year and about 1.2, 1.3 billion pounds of non-ferrous.
SA stands for Sims Adams, a joint venture between the two recycling companies that began in 2007.
It's a joint venture between Sims Metal Management and my family, and it's a 50-50 joint venture. I've worked really hard to keep SA as an entrepreneurial company and have and promote a certain type of culture within our company. And I tell people all the time, I'm not trying to build a good company. I want to build a great company. I'm trying to build a great company for my employees, for my family. And, and I think we've done a really good job at that at SA.
George has successfully kept the entrepreneurial spirit of the family business alive. Although that wasn't the initial plan.
It was never necessarily the plan to be in the scrap metal business. And I drove tow truck, I drove roll-off truck, and worked in the yard, worked at Torch, you name it, we did it. We were a very, very small little business. We had one truck, one crane, and one tow truck. So, we were a little business. And I wasn't necessarily planning on going in the business. I really didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I was always going to be a veterinarian. I went to school to study to be a veterinarian, and I realized within the first month that I hated it, that I worked at a veterinarian's office.
George decided to take some time off from school and travel to see if something piqued his interest.
After being gone a year, and I was trying to make my way over to Australia, I really only worked at the yard, came back to work at the yard for a short period of time just to earn some money. As I was working the yard, I was running a crew, and I realized at that point in time, I was 20 years old, and I realized that I really liked running the crews, and I don't know, it was all done after that. We got more contracts, and we started growing the business, and I realized that I really liked it. I don't know that I really noticed when I was younger, but that I really liked it, and that I was good at managing the crews and managing the people. And so we put our first shredder in 1980, which I would have been, 24, I guess. Put our first shredder in, and then started buying yards to feed it. It was hard to get out and get scrap. Started buying up small little yards to feed it. And that model worked successfully for us, and I just kind of grew up from there.
This allowed SA to expand rapidly, spurned by the shredder, and then shortly after, the eddy current.
And so we didn't have an eddy current. We were using gravity. I was hand picking metal. And finally, we saved up enough money to buy our first eddy current. And I just remember installing my first eddy current, and it was like magic. Eddy current has a spinning rotor inside, has alternating poles, and those alternating poles cause the aluminum and the copper and the brass to be repelled. I think the first day we put that eddy current, I must have sat there and watched that thing 8 hours. And because to me, it was just magical. And there's a heck of a lot more sophisticated equipment, but that will always be my first real experience with equipment that I thought was magical. Since then, one of the keys to our company's success has been we've always had a strong engineering department. My father learned engineering in trade. He didn't graduate past 7th, 8th grade, I don't think, because he had to go to work. But at work, I think he got trained as an engineer, and then my brothers were engineers. But I think if I had to do it all over again, I probably would become an engineer.
This basis in engineering has helped SA Recycling become the industry leader of today. On a much different journey is Brandy, whose family business started much more recently, and whose story highlights a different type of progress within the industry.
We've been in business for 28 years. My parents started this business, so a husband and wife team. And I've been in the industry almost 10 years now.
She also has a unique perspective as one of the growing number of female leaders in recycling.
As I talk to people, soon as I came into this industry, I felt very fortunate. One, because unlike many other multi-generational businesses, and I even think females in this industry, I really feel like my dad, who was the previous owner, was a true advocate. And I think having someone who is an advocate as well as a mentor goes a long way. You get to have a monetary benefit as well as not only economic, but an environmental benefit.
Once they start looking at that, they start realizing just what it means to be a recycler.
To be adaptable and innovate within an industry means not only examining the newest technical gadgets available, it also means making progress of a different kind. Brandy Harlow's father acted as an advocate for her when she started in the industry, giving her the opportunity to break into what was still a very male-oriented group.
And what I mean by an advocate is we would go to industry meetings, and the nature and talking about how things change is men or gentlemen would talk to him, and they would talk to him about, our sales, our business opportunities. And I don't even know if he was conscious of it, but he would quickly say, you need to talk to Brandy. She's the one that's overseeing our buying. Or you need to talk to Brandy. She's the one that's purchasing our equipment. And there was almost this authentic redirect. So how have things changed? I think it varies from person to person. What I see is the change is I see more intentional support of women in industry, both for male and females, which is a strong thing. I think that there has always been some level of support, but what I see has changed in the last 10 years is there is a heightened sense of support because there's a heightened awareness and there's more intentionality about it.
In the short 10 years she's been in the industry, Brandy has also noticed a shift in career opportunities for women in the industry.
While there's nothing wrong with being an office manager or cashier teller, what might have been historical roles, or a bookkeeper in this industry, those are great. And we need them. I believe that there's been or continue to be more exposure and coaching and mentoring and advocacy for women in all types of roles in this industry, whether that be a metal buyer, whether that be as the CFO, whether that be as a scale operator, or even a truck driver. I believe that there is and will continue to be an evolution.
One of the issues that needs to be tackled by several industries, including recycling, is a labor shortage. Brandy sees this differently, though. Less of a labor issue and more of a communication one.
Recycling is an interesting beast. I actually was just talking to some friends about it over the weekend. I think it could boost people's interest because just like anything else in life, there are multiple drivers for people, right? Some people actually care about the climate. And even their care of the climate is on a spectrum from, very much I want to monitor everything that I do to conceptually it sounds right. There are other people who are purely care about the monetary benefit of it, meaning, I can make money on these commodities that are also recyclables. And so I think we're experiencing right now a really neat convergence because what we're seeing is higher commodity prices for the recyclable materials. But at the same time, it also makes it appealing for those that actually do care about sustainability. And so it's almost like you get a 2-for-1. You get to have a monetary benefit as well as not only economic, but an environmental benefit.
If this is truly a communication mismatch, then one way to pique people's interests is to update the language that is being used, something that Brandy is already doing.
I would get out to different networking events and I would talk to people about what we do and what I do. And I would tell them I'm in the scrap metal business. And then I would explain to them what I did. They would definitely understand it. But after I started building relationships with people and cultivating relationships, it was very interesting how many people would say, is there another word that you guys can use? You're really in the recycling business. You're really in the sustainability business. And by them just kind of reminding me and even just hearing, if you will, the layperson's understanding, whether that just be a resident or whether that be somebody in procurement, or even a potential consumer, it really made me think, and it really made me pause to say, is there a better way to depict what we do?
Bringing a wider awareness to the industry as a whole is another strategy to attract more innovators into recycling.
A lot of people still think of recycling as the bin at the end of your driveway. And I think for me, you start explaining how it really works, and I think they get more fascinated. They want more examples. You get these windmills that come down, and you start talking to people about, how would you recycle something that weighs 200,000 pounds and sits 60 feet in the air? How would you dismantle it? And they start thinking about the broader implications of what it means to be recycling in America. That it is so much more than the glass or cardboard or plastic you set at the end of your curb. And I think once they start looking at that, they start realizing just what it means to be a recycler.
Recycling is a vital industry, producing materials that feed manufacturing facilities in the US and around the world. But to stay on top of the game, recyclers need to continue to innovate. Progress is constantly happening, and as we move to a more sustainable lifestyle, we need to reconsider what we know about recycling. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Kristen Morand, on the Big Blue Ball of Progress. We'll see you on the next episode as we explore the jobs of tomorrow.